Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with John Newman. We're going to talk about Floyd Little, recently departed. Great player, great man. So thanks, sponsors, Topps Panini and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins and Scott Auctions, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. John, welcome to the show, and tell us about your connection with Floyd Little.
Thanks, Dr. Jim. Yeah, I'm a New York City kid, so I'd be lying if I said, I followed him from, day one. But when I came to Syracuse, I'm a huge football guy and been a probably double-digit season ticket holder and getting familiar with the university and its sports history. Floyd Little with football is synonymous. He was in that triumvirate with Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, and then came Floyd Little. And Floyd Little, when you look at it stats-wise, was arguably the best player. He almost didn't come to Syracuse. General Douglas MacArthur, famous general, was recruiting him to go to Army and told him, hey, you come here, you West Point, you're going to be a general in the making and a heck of a football player for our team. It wasn't until Ernie Davis got in his ear and said, listen, you can be that guy after me that takes this baton and comes to Syracuse and makes a career for yourself. And the rest is history. He came to Syracuse, 3-time All-American, and obviously went on to the AFL, NFL, Hall of Famer in college and in the NFL. I got to know him a little bit on a personal level after his career was over. As a season ticket holder for all those years, they have a lot of private events, dinners, golf tournaments, and different things like that. He came back to university as a consultant at first in like 2011. He was always at these events and knew he was going to be there. And you think, man, he's a Hall of Famer. He's probably going to just come in, wave to everybody. Hey, see you later. We'll get in, get out. Right early in the scene, he was down to earth. Came up to you, hey, held out his hand, introduced himself, Floyd Little. He didn't have to. We all knew who he was. Genuine interest in you. I got to know him even further. I coached varsity football here in Syracuse, and we used to do camps at the university. He'd come around to practice, and I coached defense, and obviously he's an offensive guy, but he'd say, hey, what do you think, coach? How do you think you're looking? And this is before the season start. We got good expectations. And then we'd ask him, hey, Mr. Little, could you talk to the guys for 5-10 minutes? And we'd sit them all down and just real down to earth, tell them to get good grades. Football, as much as we all love football, the music's going to stop. Education is important, and there's life after football. We asked him for 5 minutes, and he usually gave 10, 15. Guys would come up to him, shake hands with him, take pictures with him. And sometimes you do that enough with certain people, who's doing it because they sort of have to, and others who are doing it because they thoroughly enjoy being in the presence of young men. And I always felt like the 2 or 3 times he did that with our football team, he wasn't going through the motions. He was being sincere and happy to be there and hoping to connect with some of those guys. And I'll never forget that stuff. They announced a few months ago that he was entering hospice care. And obviously that's just a sad thing to hear.
John, do you think Ernie Davis gave Floyd Little permission to wear 44? Or Jim Brown gave Ernie permission to wear 44? Or were uniform numbers that big a deal?
44 in Syracuse lore is for game-changing running backs. Jim Brown bestowed it on Ernie Davis, the Elmira Express. I think Ben Schwartzwalder, the coach of Syracuse, probably said, hey, there's this kid, Floyd Little from New Haven, Connecticut, who's going to be great. I don't know if that's all it took, but he came to Syracuse and 3-time All-American and first-round draft pick in the AFL and Hall of Famer on both levels, college and pro.
The other thing is that he was 21 years old when he started college. In today's hobby, and today's general managers would probably have a problem with the fact that he was older, but maybe he was mature. A lot of times guys that went to the military academy that were my age would go an extra year of high school to get further preparation for academies. He went to a prep school that was a good program, but can imagine being a running back and you're a rookie and you're 25 years old.
Yeah, and I guess there's 2 sides to that coin, Dr. Jim. You can say you're a little more intelligent than maybe some of the guys that are trying to tackle you. But it's still the pros. Those guys are trying to win too. I think that was kind of a big coup because he went to a military high school and prep school. And so everyone just thought it was a foregone conclusion that he would wind up in Army. So Syracuse pulled, I don't want to say a fast one, but the upset in getting them to go there. The community embraced him. And even after he became the assistant AD, to Chris Gedney. He's passed on as well. He played in the NFL. And there's another connection. Chris Gedney was my high school teammate here at Liverpool High School in Syracuse. And we both played tight end. He was a high school All-American. I wasn't. So I learned to play defense if I was going to see the field more. Chris Gedney was another great guy. You knew he was going places. He was that good, but he never like bragged about himself, real humble. And we miss both of those guys here locally.
Okay. What about Floyd's hobby respect? Do you feel like he gets enough respect? The AFC was, or the AFL in those days, in the first year or so, was the more wide open league. Floyd Little, probably the same age as Gale Sayers. So Gale Sayers is coming in for the Bears, just passed away a few months ago. And then Floyd Little for the AFC. Gale Sayers gets a lot more hobby love than Floyd Little does.
Yeah, I think some of what you mentioned, Dr. Jim, a little bit of late start in his age, it led to a shorter career. He's a Hall of Famer, but if you look at his career statistics, they don't jump off the page at you, quite frankly. Matter of fact, when I looked at him or when I was reading the bio, I didn't actually realize. I thought it would be even more so. But it was a different game, too, and he did catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield, even before that was the thing to do. And he's the first guy put in the Broncos Ring of Fame. It was just a different football game. I don't think they gave running backs as many carries as we see now with workhorse guys getting 25, 30. They just tried to use different guys. They had, obviously, their star, but they also tried to give them breaks during the game. But, yeah, I was surprised. I think people sometimes look at stats as the tell-all be-all, and that's not always the case. I think someone a little bit younger who just looks at the stats and said, man, under 7,000 yards total. Derrick Henry just rushed for 2,000 this year. Like, that's 3 Derrick Henry years, and he's a Hall of Famer. And I don't think they see the big picture. The game is different than it is today. And
you're right. If you didn't see the player play, and I'm not just talking about newsreel clips, but if you didn't see him play, then it's hard to have an appreciation. It's one of the reasons in the hobby, there's this hard to figure divide between the price of vintage cards, and these guys have totally proven themselves, and these more untested younger players that are still emerging, and there's all the promise, but they haven't done it. Floyd Little did it 9 straight years. The other thing I really liked, I saw this quote from him, and I realized that's what's different, is that when he was returning kicks and punts, now maybe he didn't reveal this until the end, but he liked to go right up the middle.
Yeah.
And these guys now that run out of bounds or try to do these end around things to where everybody can catch up with them. So you go straight up the middle. Sometimes that's your best shot. Of course, they've outlawed the wedge.
Yeah.
But so frustrating to see a guy take a punt return and retreat, 5 10 yards.
Yeah.
Try to get behind the wall and run out of bounds. He had to be an instinctive runner. I was thinking, how would you compare him to Emmitt Smith?
They were both small, I believe.
Similar size, I guess.
Yeah, they're both small in terms of running back traditional.
Vision, reasonable speed without being Tyree.
And what I know of Floyd Little, he was, I wouldn't use the term he was fast, but he was deceptively fast. He wasn't afraid of contact. That's half the battle in itself, is someone that's going to lower their shoulder and maybe break a tackle and gain 3, 4, 5 more yards, or break one even. Sometimes that might lead to a shorter career with some injuries, if that's the case. A lot of where we know Floyd Little is from people who played against him that said, this guy's one of the best running backs I've ever had to play against on the defensive side of the ball. It's defensive players who laud that distinction more than the stats itself. If we looked at stats, people would argue those are not Hall of Fame stats, but Hall of Fame defensive players are like, I used to dread having to play against Floyd Little before the game. It's
all pro and Pro Bowl appearances and things like that. Very many people that PC Floyd Little.
No, not locally. I'm sure there's people do what I've done for about 4 or 5 years after getting to know him and meeting him. It's funny. I never asked him for an autograph. I've had conversations with him. He's had that interaction with the varsity football team I coach, but I never asked him for his autograph. A lot of his stuff is probably undervalued, and I bought back in the day quite a bit of just his signed cards at different times, $10, $12, even maybe a nicer upper tier one, $20, $25. And I've just picked them up over the years. I don't PC a ton of stuff, but I just put those away and getting to know them and appreciating more the man even than the player. When the conversations I never even brought that up to him. We didn't even talk about cards. It was really just life or football or the team.
Players really respected him. It's not sad. It really is an opportunity that he has very few cards that are worth, like you said, $20, $25. You can get a decent raw rookie, and there's probably I think he's got a 72 tops high number in action card. But other than that, under $10, you could get decent copies of almost all of his other cards. If you wanted to put that together, you'd have a Hall of Fame, running back and returner. I'm wondering if he was arguably a better college player than a pro player in terms of
stat wise, for sure. If you look at his stats at Syracuse, he had some monster years. There's people familiar with the program that would argue at the college level, he arguably better than the two running backs before him. But Jim Brown went in the NFL and dominated, and arguably is the greatest NFL player in the history of the league. Players can change or improve at different levels. And I think Jim Brown exploded. He was great in college. I don't make it sound like he just came out of nowhere, but when he got to the NFL, he just single-handedly dominated. Floyd didn't really do that, but at college he did for sure. He was just a three-time All-American, the only player at Syracuse to do it three times.
Right. Yeah, he came in fifth in the Heisman junior and senior year. But do you see any overflow, being a Syracuse guy, of Floyd Little? He gets this attention now. Is that going to make people think twice about Jim Nance, who was the opposite style of running back?
Yeah.
And some of the other great, Larry Zonka, who's
Joe
Morris, who was a Mighty Mite. People don't realize that Syracuse was super strong in football in the 50s and 60s, one of the very top programs. And now they've had some on and off years, but
they were at one time, they were known as like running back U, just because of all these, and the legend of 44. They gave that 44 to that back coming in that they thought was going to be that guy. Even a lesser known name that went on to play in the NFL. He's the last guy to wear the 44, actually. And that's Rob Conrad, who was a fullback, played with the Dolphins, and he was the last guy to have it. No one since him. But there's talks here every once in a while if they got a special high school talent. Could they unretire? I don't know. People here locally feel like it would be sacrilegious. It's been Rob Conrad. It's been almost 20 years, and that's a lot to put on a young 17 or 18-year-old to wear that number. Not only knowing the history of it, but we have to unretire this number and then give it to you. It's not like it wasn't retired. We're going to have to take it off the rafters, and you get to wear it again. That's a lot for someone who coached 17, 18-year-old kids before. Every kid has a different makeup and mentality, but I think a lot of people here locally, fan-wise, don't really want to see that because of the history of it. And Rob Conrad was an All-American too, I believe. I think they want to end it on a positive note. What
a great player and a great man. And the one thing I like about these tribute episodes, especially doing it with you, where you had some personal knowledge. I watched him play to know that he was a quality guy, and that's going to bring more scrutiny to his cards. And that's a good thing. He's definitely a worthy guy to collect. I just think they're bargains in the sense of all those football cards of Hall of Famers. And I would not in any way say Floyd Little's a minor Hall of Famer. I think he's a major Hall of Famer. There'll probably be a flurry of interest in his cards for a month, and then maybe not so much after that, but he's worthy of consideration throughout.
I was just fortunate. I had no idea that was going to be the trajectory, get to know him a little bit on that level. Someone passes away and they say all great things, and most of them are true, but sometimes that gets a little bit embellished because the person is gone. But I can tell you, as someone who got to know him over the course of 5 to 7 years, just a really great person, really humble. He didn't wear his Hall of Fame sport coat around. Just a great human being, and it's going to be a big loss here locally not having him around.
Thanks, John. Sports Card Nation, one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to you a couple times a week, right?
Yeah, Wednesday. I moved the Hobby Quick Hits, the shorter show, over onto the same platform, and that's Wednesday. And then Friday, Sports Card Nation, the longer one with the guests.
Thanks for doing this, John, and thanks, listeners. We'll be back again tomorrow with another episode. In the meantime, check out Floyd Little.
Thanks, Dr. Jim.